Hi, everyone. My name is David Leis, and I'm your proud host of Leaders on the Frontier. And this edition is live. Our date today is December 21st, 2023, the year of our Lord. And on that note, we can all look to December 25. As this year wraps up, we, of course, look to Christmas. And I can think of no better person to join us to talk about Christmas is St. Nicholas's designate, the senior fellow at Frontier and historian and author, Dr. Gerry Bowler. Welcome, Gerry.
Nice to be here, David. Happy St. Thomas's Day to you.
Indeed, St. Thomas Day. There's many marks of history today on December 21, and including winter solstice. So go figure as we enjoy the shortest day of the year, among other things. So is that correct, Gerry?
Yeah, as John Donne would say, it is the year's midnight.
Indeed. Okay. So I'm really excited about our discussion today in the live format. We get to hear from our special people, our audience. So I'm very excited about that. So please think about your questions as we talk about the meaning of Christmas, the story of Christmas, and specifically we'll be picking up a little bit on the release of a recording on Leaders on the Frontier. And if you haven't seen it, please take the time to look at it. We'd welcome your comments. We've gotten a lot of outstanding feedback from people. And it's all based on the book called Christmas in the Crosshairs by our guest, Dr. Gerry Bowler. And it's a fascinating book. I very much enjoyed it. The subtitle, interestingly enough, is 2,000 Years of Denouncing and Defending the World's Most Celebrated Holiday. So we're going to have quite a conversation. So again, the audience, we ask you to send your questions in through the chat, both on YouTube and also on X. And on that note, I want to ask a big question to Gerry, and that is there a war on Christmas, Gerry?
Not only is there a war on Christmas, there are wars on Christmas, and there has always been one war or another for the last about 1,800 years. Christmas is simply too important not to argue about.
So Christmas is kind of an easy target, if I can use that language, because, as you say, it's such a big deal in our society still, isn't it?
It is. The day makes remarkable claims, which, if true, are enormously consequential. And it's a target because those who are opposed to the claims that Christianity and Christmas make, this is the best time of the year to attack it. This is when Christianity is most public, when our astonishing beliefs are put out into the public square. And we say that the creator of the universe came to Earth 2,000 odd years ago in the form of a human baby. And from that, all history is affected. So it's too astonishing, too all-encompassing and bold a statement not to be celebrated if you're of that mind, or to be opposed if you disagree.
Yeah, no, I think you're it's a profound point, Gerry, is that, Christmas isn't just simply kind of the traditional markings of Christmas from like the colors and pageantry, but it's profoundly about worldviews and how that can really collide with other, dare I say, totalitarian views of the world or other perspectives that are almost diametrically opposed. Is that another way to look at this, Gerry?
Sure. Christianity has always faced the problem of being embedded in one society or another. A feudal society, a totalitarian society, pre-capitalist, capitalist, tribal, whatever. Christianity and its beliefs have to confront society every day. Sometimes Christianity and the local society merge. They're symbiotic, and we can see that in Christmas.
Mhm.
Christmas has adopted many of the celebratory motifs of everybody else's midwinter festival. Concentration on um, drink, food, light, greenery that is natural at this time of year. Um,
Indeed.
and also the demands of the state, um, not just of totalitarian states, which is an interesting history in itself, but also the liberal state. Um,
Mhm.
so Christianity and Christmas are at its boldest and yet most vulnerable um, around December 25th.
Yeah, no, it's a great insight, Jerry. It's a kind of a paradox, is that people of faith then see their loyalty ultimately to God, our Maker, but also they can be citizens in a society. Um, but that's a problem if you're a totalitarian, isn't it? Because they want full control. They want everything. Is that right?
Yes, the 21st century is the 20th century leading into the 21st, the great era of totalitarianism, of
Hmm.
governments that want everything in the state, everything for the state. And Christmas aren't compatible with that. We
Hmm.
make um, demands that are not fitting to a Nazi or a communist or a
Hmm.
Peronista in Argentina, or Mexican revolutionary in the 1920s. So part of the book is dealing with how Christianity encounters these societies, and societies that are totalitarian have to decide: do we try to abolish Christmas, or do
Hmm.
we use it? Do we make it about what we believe in? And so the Nazi approach would be different than the Chinese communist approach, which would be different than the Russian communist approach, which would be different
Yeah.
than Mexican
But
revolutionaries.
but as you point out so well, either way, you can't really ignore Christmas, because it's not just about the pageantry, as we said. It's about some pretty fundamental things about your worldview. So you either kind of
It is.
work around it, or you get rid of it. Is that right?
Yeah. And when you've got 2 billion people in the world at the moment who have at least a nominal allegiance to those creedal statements,
Hmm.
that's something that everybody has to sit up to and take notice when we enter the public square. And we do for a month of the year. We invade everybody else's space with our music, our attitudes toward
Hmm.
consumption, our decorations, our trees, our lights, our caroling, marches, and so on. So this it's a time for people to reckon with what Christmas means, both inside and outside Christianity. Because remember, there's a not insignificant chunk of Christianity that doesn't like Christmas. That
They don't like
believes,
Christmas?
indeed, yeah,
Come
we
on,
see
Jerry.
this. Oh, I'm willing to blow the whistle here on the neo Calvinists. Um,
Okay, those neo Calvinists, and they didn't like Christmas. And we know others, perhaps the Puritans,
the
and
Puritans, yeah,
it's again well said in the book. But why did they not like Christmas?
any number of reasons. The first would be what they call the regulative principle, which means that unless it's specifically instructed in the Bible, you don't
Hmm.
do it. So,
Right.
no celebration of Christmas in the Bible, no celebration of Easter in the Bible. So, you abolish pretty much the Christian festival year. No Pentecost, no Easter, no Christmas. That's one thing. The
Okay.
second thing is that Catholics do it, and anything Catholics do is bad, so that's out. And
Ah.
thirdly, people are just having too much fun. Too much
Okay.
eating, too much drinking, too much dancing, too much joking. Um, and no Christian ought to be having that kind of fun.
Isn't
So
that interesting?
the original Puritanism in the 1500s and 1600s um, reawakened in the late half of the 20th century. And so we have many Christian churches around the world that will quite vigorously attack Christmas. They'll put Santa Claus on trial, they'll hang Santa Claus in effigy, they'll sing anti Christmas carols,
That's right.
They'll
Even today?
oh, absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
Go to the Westboro Baptist Church in Topeka, famous for all kinds of attacks on society, but they have a wonderful collection of Christmas parodies. Santa Claus Will Take You to Hell is the one sung by their little
Mhm.
children's chorus. So you can check that out. Yeah,
Wow.
there's a lot of it. And that that leaks over into those who are willing to celebrate Christmas, but who are mistrusting of this the syncretism that has come in. So they'll celebrate Christmas, but they don't like Santa Claus. They don't trust Santa Claus. They're worried that
Mm,
Santa Claus has usurped the baby Jesus. And so we
okay.
see a Catholic cathedral in France burning Santa Claus in effigy. Or we'll see wonderful Christmas ornaments or memes in which Santa Claus kneels down by the side of the crib with his hat off,
Mhm.
praying to Jesus, showing that the real reason for the season is the baby Jesus and not Santa. Um,
Interesting.
you know,
Well, we certainly need healthy debate. That's certainly an important principle that we emphasize, and dare I say, not only at Frontier, but in larger liberal democratic society. So at least they mean well, and they're asking, what is the real reason for the season? So I am talking with Dr. Gerry Bowler about the war on Christmas. In fact, the larger story of Christmas and its meaning. What does it mean to you as an audience? We'd love to hear from you. And I do have a question from the audience, Gerry, and that is, what is the correct date for Christmas? Is it December 25th?
yes. um,
Okay, well, the next question. Okay.
yeah, moving right along. There's a considerable chunk of my book that talks about December 25th. The early church had a couple centuries of debate about what date was to be chosen. There are a number of clues in the gospel, many of them seemingly contradictory. There were a number of possible dates suggested, but December 25th is the one that the church in the West, that is to say Rome, Gaul, Britain, came up with by the early 300s. The church in the East, Egypt, Antioch, Jerusalem, Constantinople, had opted for January 6th. Both of these dates were picked to fit a curious set of calculations, which, to make really, really simple, said that because we know that Jesus died in the spring and
Mhm.
that great men in history live lives of complete years, that is to say, they'll be born and die on the same date, the conception of Jesus must therefore take place in the early spring, and then 9 months later, hey presto, December 25th. There are
Hmm.
also those who are so bold as to calculate from the appearance of the tribe of Zechariah in the temple the date of the conception of John the Baptist, and we can compare that, and so on and so on. So there's all kinds of interesting calculations that set it on December 25th.
Interesting.
I think it was an act of genius to do that, to put it at the time when the earth is at its darkest. December 25th
Hmm.
used to be, um, for a time, the winter solstice. It's the bleakest time of the year, the darkest time of the year, and
Mhm.
just the perfect time for a religion that says Jesus is the new sun, Jesus is the
Wow.
rebirth. So it was very tactful of the church to
Mhm.
pick those dates. And to answer the questioner, there's lots and lots and lots of books on this very subject. And December 25th is, I think, a better date than any other.
Wow, that's actually a very inspiring insight, Jerry. I'd never heard that before.
Huh.
explained quite in that way relative to the darkest time of year, and this is when we look to hope, including the remembrance of the birth of Jesus. So that's excellent. So
Again, it's part of the world turned upside down. The
mhm,
social reversal that Christmas means, that God
mhm,
comes to the planet Earth in the form of somebody helpless, utterly
mhm,
unable to control his own bowels or move his arms and
mhm,
legs the way he wants to, and yet the most helpless and the most lovable, um,
mhm,
freezing in an animal shelter, warmed by the breath of the ox and the ass.
mhm. Yeah.
You can't get a tenderer moment in history than that, and that's another good reason to put it on December 25th.
Yeah, and that the divine God would come in that incredible humble form,
Hmm.
and as a statement of love for everyone is really
Yeah.
something we don't necessarily, I think many people don't really fully appreciate this so-called social inversion. You
Hmm.
talk about that in the book, right? Like things are upside down, that God would love us that much and
Exactly.
sacrifice,
There's
right?
a wonderful Italian carol called, in translation, "You've Come from the Stars," and the singer asks why this particular way, and he realized the answer is um, so that we can love you, that you are at this, the most vulnerable, the most tender, the most lovable,
Mhm.
far
Yeah.
more love inspiring than if you were born in a palace or if you came, fully grown at the head of a legion of angels.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you want love, look to a little baby.
Exactly. What a beautiful thought, and what a kind of an invitation for anybody of whatever background they are. I mean, we can appreciate people's different cultural backgrounds and stories, but you almost have to really kind of immerse yourself in that story to fully appreciate it and understand it. Because there's so many people that are, dare I say, trying to vilify Christians in some circles. It's almost like they're the assumptions that Christians are people of hate, when in fact, well, certainly in our book, that's just the opposite. It's one of tolerance and understanding of others. So I find that quite ironic, isn't it, as we think and look to Christmas?
It's a fabulous story. It's certainly worthy of a movie. I think you should make a movie about the
Yeah,
Nativity.
indeed.
Uh, yeah.
So when we look at traditions today, Jerry, um, and we'd love to hear from the audience about what traditions are important to you during Christmas. But when did the traditions of Christmas that we kind of recognize today, like gift giving, I realized that there were the three magi that honored Jesus with gifts. But when did those kinds of more modern day traditions really start to become more visible?
First gifts are gifts of the Magi. Um, but as soon as Christmas becomes legal, becomes established in the 300s, we start hearing talk of Christmas gifts. Um,
Mhm,
is probably strengthened by the fact that it was very close to the Roman New Year, and the Roman New Year was a time for exchange of gifts. But
mhm,
from the 300s on to the present day, gifts are inseparable from Christmas. Um, in the Middle Ages, the gifts, would have to be handmade, um,
mhm,
and were often in the form of food and drink. With the 19th century, so on, in the Industrial Revolution, then we have the um, the coincidence of a consumer society with lots of cheap trinkets to make
mhm,
and give away, and the emergence of a new, softer attitude to child rearing. So,
mhm,
Christmas in the 19th century dramatically changes from a focus on the community and community festivities to the family and particularly to the child. And
okay.
so all of those come together. But gifts have been around since the beginning. The tree is about 500 years old. Um, Comes from the German habit of bringing greenery and particularly chunks of evergreen into into the house. Christmas wrapping is only about 120 years old.
Hmm.
Christmas lights, that goes back to candles on the tree, and then the invention by Edison in the late 19th century of the electric light. Um, Christmas
Oh,
dinner
it's
turkey.
interesting.
Yeah. Turkey is about 500 years old. It's a bird found in the Americas and brought back to Europe. Um, an expensive bird, an exotic bird. Most English families could only afford a goose. So if
Hmm.
you look at A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, the Cratchits, who are poor, um,
Yes.
have a goose, and they don't even have an oven. They have to have the goose cooked at the local bakery. And
Hmm.
you would have seen crowds of families outside the local bakery getting their geese done. And it's Scrooge who buys the big turkey because he's the rich guy.
Interesting. So turkeys were an exotic bird and not that common. So
No,
it's only more recent, is that right?
they came in the 1500s to Europe. Um,
Hmm.
they were eaten at Christmas, but then so were peacocks. Um,
Hmm.
the great English Christmas dish for a long time was a pork brawn, and then they brought in roast beef and peacock, swan, eaten by the royal family. It's Victoria and her husband Albert who popularized turkeys. Who once the middle class hears that the royal family is eating turkey, well, by
Oh,
golly, nothing less than turkey would do.
gosh, they were the pace setters.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting if we think of culinary traditions. I can think of course, the tradition of cranberry sauces. Is there
Mhm.
anything significant about that when it comes to Christmas?
Um, Cranberry sauce? No. Though cranberries were the North American equivalent of holly. Um,
Oh, yes, right.
when the English settlers came over, they couldn't find any holly for Christmas, so cranberries became part of the
Interesting.
Christmas
Well, they
scene.
serve.
Yeah, every culture has wonderful, wonderful food.
Mhm.
Uh, Catholic societies, Orthodox societies are big on fasting, particularly on New Year's Eve. So you'll have, you go to a Ukrainian house on New Year's Eve and you'll have the 12 meatless dishes. Oh.
Okay.
And
Wow.
then you can break the
Is that
fast.
is that fasting or full fasting,
Um,
Jerry?
it depends how you define it, but because it's not meat, it's a fast. Uh,
Okay. Oh,
you,
that's interesting.
and then either once the first star appears, then you can break your fast, or after the midnight mass. And of course, then in Canada we have the wonderful Réveillon with the
Mhm.
tortillere and all kinds of good
Mhm.
stuff. Mhm.
Well, no, it's amazing time. Um, so when you look at Christmas, how do you prepare your family for Christmas, Dr. Bowler?
We start months in advance so that everybody knows what's going on. Nobody's disappointed. There are no assumptions made that aren't specifically spelled out. Um, there's no December rush, and we get, in theory, get our Christmas cards out quite early in December. All the Christmas baking done. All the family knows um,
Mhm.
where everybody's going to be. Everybody knows who gets gifts and to what extent. This Christmas was to be a homemade Christmas um, special. So
Mm.
there was much sewing and sculpting and um, book putting together and drawing and things going on in the
Wow.
Bowler household. So I would urge families to do that. To get your Christmas geese in a row in the fall, and it takes the stress and the worry out of Christmas. Um, I have not set foot in a mall at Christmas time in years, and that's a
Wow.
mercy. Yeah.
I bet you a lot of people would be they'd be impressed by that kind of planned approach. That's interesting. Um, so Jerry, part of this though is that it sounds like you are facilitating your family. You're facilitating stronger relationships with your family and your loved ones within the true meaning of
I'm
Christmas.
a
Is that what you're
yeah.
doing?
Oh, sure. We have the traditions that the kids started and that we've maintained now that we have grandchildren. We will all be separate. We'll be in different countries at Christmas, but I'm sure we'll come together on Skype or Zoom and read the Bible story verse by verse as we used to do when there were little kids around the table, and then we'll all head for the presents and commence to screaming and opening and carrying on.
Very good. I do have a question from the audience, and it is, who really was Saint Nicholas? I guess
Well,
it's getting at the whole point earlier that there are some groups that don't like Santa Claus or maybe a little bit
mhm.
suspicious of Santa Claus. And of course, in popular culture, there's a lot of imagery of Santa Claus that is kind of bizarre. But when you scrape that all aside, I guess the question is, who was really Saint Nicholas?
Nicholas of Myra, Myra,
Hmm.
was a citizen of the Eastern Roman Empire uh, in the early 300s. He was a bishop who attended the 325 Council of Nicaea that
Hmm.
debated the divinity of Jesus. He's famous for
Yeah.
having punched out Arius, who proposed that Jesus was less than fully divine. He had a
Hmm.
reputation during his life for generosity. And after his death, um, he became the most powerful saint in heaven next to the Virgin Mary. He became the patron
Oh.
saint of dozens and dozens of occupations and places and churches.
Hmm.
He became the patron saint of children, the patron saint of fishermen, the patron saint of thieves, the patron saint of barrel makers, and so on and so on.
Sorry,
And
I beg your pardon. Did you say patron saint of thieves? Oh, I
yes,
never knew there was such a thing.
thieves were known as St. Nicholas clerks, the St. Nicholas's clergy. And
Okay,
goes back to a legend of him converting thieves. Um,
interesting.
he, he becomes, by 1200, a secret midnight gift bringer. Before 1200, um, kids didn't get gifts much at Christmas unless they demanded it, unless they went around in groups from door to door, like on Halloween, and
Hmm.
demanded treats. But starting around 1200, the story spread that St. Nicholas came and dropped things in the shoes, later stockings, of good children. So that
Hmm.
became amazingly popular. Um, a crisis occurred in the 1500s with the advent of Protestantism that didn't like the cult of saints at all and booted
Mhm.
out St. Nicholas and replaced him with the Christ child as the gift bringer. And so
Mm.
you have Le Petit Jésus or Das Christkindl in France or Germany bringing gifts. But the
Wow.
Dutch hang on to St. Nicholas and they bring him to the New World, into what's now New York. The Dutch colonies persisted in the belief of the man they called Sinterklaas, St. Nicholas.
Sinterklaas. Yes, we've
Sinterklaas,
heard of
St. Nicholas.
Sinterklaas.
And that becomes, through a phonetic mangling, Santa Claus. So Santa
Mm.
Claus is an American secularized version of St. Nicholas. The two are totally separate, even though casually we might refer to Santa Claus as St. Nick. Really, the two are
Wow.
separate, and St. Nicholas continues to be the gift bringer rather than Santa Claus in many European countries.
Wow, this is fascinating background, Jerry. As usual, you're a great storyteller, and it's amazing how the Dutch kept Sinterklaas or Saint Nicholas alive
Mm-hmm.
and rolling forward to today. So it almost sounds like we need to kind of think more and remember the true meaning of Saint Nicholas as well as a devout follower of Jesus Christ. That's probably a good tradition to have or start up if you don't have it. Is that right, Jerry?
Um, I've encouraged people that are a little uneasy with Santa Claus to replace Santa Claus with either the Christ child or St. Nicholas, or some countries, it's the three wise men. In Hispanic countries, particularly Spain, gifts
Mhm.
come on Epiphany to coincide with the arrival of the Magi. And in Spain,
Mhm.
on January 5th and 6th, you'll see huge parades with Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar riding through towns on camels, bringing
Mhm.
Christmas gifts.
Well, look, today we're talking on December the 21st, 2023, as we approach the days of Christmas. And if you have any questions, please bring them forward or keep bringing them forward. I'm getting a couple more questions here, but I just wanted, before I get to those, I did have a question for you again. Where can we get your book, Dr. Bowler? This is a good question.
You can get them very easily through Amazon. My first Christmas book was called The World Encyclopedia of Christmas. It's hard to get that in hardcover anymore, but you can still get it as an ebook. My second one was Santa Claus: A Biography. The
Wow.
third one, which you saw there, Christmas in the Crosshairs. Any bookstore can order it, but Amazon's probably the quickest. And then the fourth, which is through Amazon, is The World's Greatest Christmas Stories.
Wow. And here is the book, Christmas in the Crosshairs. And so it's not an overstatement to say that you are one of the world's leading experts on the story of Christmas, period.
Well, I would say it, but I'm Canadian, so I can't.
Yeah, I'm saying it. I'm Canadian. And I'm very proud of that. So, Gerry, we want to thank you again for joining us. And so I do have another question, and that is, how did the Dutch legend of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle have a profound impact on Christmas?
Well, it didn't, but the author of those stories did. The author of those stories was Rip Van Winkle. Sorry, not Rip Van Winkle.
No.
It was Washington Irving.
Yes,
Washington
Washington
Irving
Irving.
was the first professional American fiction writer. And early in the 1800s, he wrote a book called Dietrich Knickerbocker's History of New York, which was a parody of a history of the Dutch times in New York, where the Dutch preceded the British and set up New Amsterdam
Mm-hmm.
and New Netherlands, and which was replaced by New York.
Mm-hmm.
Among the stories that Washington Irving is going to write about the Dutch days are Rip Van Winkle and Sleepy Hollow, but he also has a tantalizing mention of St. Nicholas riding over the rooftops of New York in a horse-drawn wagon, dropping presents into the chimneys. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's going to be one of a number of appearances of St. Nicholas or Sinterklaas or Sandy Claw, whatever
Mm-hmm.
mangling you get early in the 1800s, that's finally going to emerge into Santa Claus in the 1820s.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating background. And this, again, this interface, this interaction between the true meaning of Christmas and how culture tries to keep telling that story in its current context, or in other ways attacks it. So I do want to ask you about Charles Dickens, because you talk about Charles Dickens and the significance of Charles Dickens storytelling in books like, The Christmas Carol was a profound impact on Christmas. Can you tell us more about that, Gerry?
In Britain, as well as in the United States, around the year 1800, Christmas had fallen into disrepute. It had become kind of a rowdy, outdoor, alcohol-centered bash. And there were lots of class conflicts. It wasn't anything that the middle class liked to do. It wasn't
Mhm.
anything that the upper class had much to do with.
Wow.
In the United States, the invention of Santa Claus is going to change that. And in Britain, a number of things are going to change that. A bunch of musicologists go into the countryside and rescue old carols that had been forgotten. a movement inside the Church of England to spend more attention on festivals and decoration. And thirdly, the 1843 publication of A Christmas Carol, which miraculously it's a short little book. It's not even a novel, it's a novella. Wrenches
A novella?
a novella. Yeah.
What's the difference between a novella and a novel?
One shorter than the other. And
Okay.
a novelette is shorter than a novella.
I had no idea. Thank you.
Okay. He wrenches Christmas back indoors and focuses it on family, forgiveness, charity, reconciliation. Just astonishing. And the book becomes enormously popular. It's pirated. He doesn't make much money from it because of copyright laws. People are ripping him off right, left, and center. But it really changes people's attitude to Christmas and helps rescue Christmas from this disrepute into which it had fallen.
Gosh, what a remarkable story. So maybe that's another good Christmas tradition, is not only read the story within the Bible, but read Dickens' Christmas Carol, or at least watch the movie.
Yes, and let me be categorical here about what movies you're going to watch. You may watch, audience, you are permitted to watch the 1951 English version called Scrooge in England, or A Christmas Carol here. It features Alistair Sim, but you must not watch it.
What?
Don't watch it in the Turner colorized version. Watch it in the black and white. That you may watch. You may not watch Albert Finney, Henry the Fonz Winkler, George C. Scott, any number of imitations. But you may watch A Muppet Christmas Carol. The two of them are the canonical Christmas carols. The only two worth spending your time on. And I'll think less of you if you watch anything else.
Well, I do love the 1951 version, and I do like it in black and white. So why against the color? Can you clarify that again?
It was made for black and white. This is a movie about shadows and ghosts. It's a ghost story.
Yes.
And the colorization is just dreadful. It blurs and blots, takes all the and looks artificial too.
Okay, so noted. So just to remind the audience again, if you've just joined us on X and YouTube, I'm with the great scholar, Dr. Gerry Bowler, about the history and story of Christmas, and including his book, The War on Christmas. And speaking of that title, we had talked earlier in our conversation about the totalitarians, those communists and socialists like the Nazis and in the Communist Party of China, as well as the Soviets. I mean, there's so many of them that really did not like Christmas and the real significance of it. Is that right, Gerry? Can you summarize that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. In the 20th century, Christmas is a big thing. When you take over Germany, when you take over Russia or Italy, and you're a dictator, you discover that millions of your people love this festival, love the notion of a baby God. Well, that belief contradicts many of the claims that you're making. Your new secular religion is about strength. It's about power. The Christians are all about weakness and forgiveness and being nice and icky stuff like that. So out with that. At first, the Nazis tried to just show up at ordinary Christmas pageants and stuff. But under the influence of the SS, the really neo-pagan, black-shirted elite, they wanted to move Christmas away from December 25th with its emphasis on the cradle and move it to the winter solstice and bring back the pagan gods. Bring back males, semi-clad males dancing around the fire and being strong and thumping their chest and carrying on. So the Nazis make war on Christmas. You can sing Silent Night, but Jesus is written out of the script and Adolf Hitler is put in.
Yeah. Well, in fact, in the book, you even have a picture of, I think, Adolf Hitler kind of, well, he sent out some Christmas cards, but the focus was on him. It's almost bizarre. Like
Yep.
the Jesus is God, but if you're totalitarian, you see yourself as God, right? Like if you're in that tradition of being a totalitarian, then obviously you think you're it, right?
Interesting thing is, Adolf Hitler shows up much more in Canadian, British, and American wartime Christmas cards than he does in German ones. There's a whole, I've got a whole collection of Christmas cards making fun of Adolf Hitler.
Interesting.
In the Soviet Union, they wanted to form the first atheist society, and they let loose a bunch of hooligans called the League of the Militant Godless to bust up Christmas pageants and Christmas services.
Can you repeat that? This league? What was its name?
The League of the Militant Godless.
Gosh.
An atheist outfit, kind of like atheist stormtroopers.
Hard to believe.
But Stalin in the 1930s realized that Christmas still had a hold on people. So he cleverly moved Christmas celebrations to New Year's and made them all New Year's celebrations. So you have a New Year's tree and you're having a New Year's gift. And out goes St. Nicholas, out goes the baby Jesus, and in comes this figure from Russian folklore, totally secularized, called Grandfather Frost. Dead.
Yes. Right. Yes.
And what makes Stalin's move so clever is that on the Russian calendar, New Year's happens before Christmas, because the Russian state is operating on the modernized Gregorian calendar, but the Orthodox Church is still operating on the Julian calendar. So Christmas comes a week after New Year's in Russia. So that means the state can control the supply of trees and foods and gifts for New Year's, and then cut it off.
Wow.
For the celebration of Christmas.
But Jerry, there's this constant pattern of the state and those people in power seeking to manipulate Christmas for their own ends, or even getting rid of it. It seems like there's two approaches: one manipulating it, or the other one getting rid of it. Is that kind of your observation?
Look at what happens in liberal democracies. Politicians can't ignore Christmas. You have to observe it. It's just too big. But the question is, do you observe it as if you were a Christian, or do you observe it as if it were just another holiday on the calendar? And so we see, for example, among American presidents, that they don't send out Christmas cards anymore. They send out holiday greetings cards.
So that's the sidestep, right?
Well, they have such a litigious society and court cases about everything. Can you have a Christmas tree, or must you call it something else? There was a famous case in Massachusetts. Halifax, Nova Scotia, suffered the great explosion in 1917 that devastated the city. And the city of Boston was very generous in sending aid. So for decades, the people of Nova Scotia have chopped down an enormous conifer and sent it to Boston to put up in a square as a Christmas tree.
What a wonderful gesture.
Well, you'd think so, but one mayor decided that this was not a Christmas tree, this was a holiday tree. And the Canadians were quite upset. The guy who chopped the tree down said, if I'd known it was going to be a holiday tree, I'd have put it through the chipper. And the premier of Nova Scotia said it was a Christmas tree when it left here. So eventually the governor of Massachusetts had to say, no, it's a Christmas tree.
Wow. So, this almost gets to be ridiculous. Well, speaking of Canada, we know that there's been an interesting report, and I did take the time to read it, Jerry, by the Canadian Human Rights Commission. Their report basically calls Christmas colonial bias.
Well,
Christmas is discriminatory, says the Canadian Human Rights Commission report. The observance of Jesus' birth is a quote, an obvious example of religious bias rooted in colonialism, wrote the commission. What do you think about that, Gerry? I guess our Marxist friends at the Human Rights Commission, this is all consistent with their view of colonialism. Is that right?
I, it's a breathtaking statement. It's actually true on the surface of it. Christmas came with colonialism.
Mhm.
The natives didn't celebrate Christmas. And it is discriminatory because it's one of the two religious holidays on the calendar that are both Christian.
Mhm.
That it is somehow, this is somehow deleterious and should be the subject of an inquiry by the Human Rights Commission shows where um, their heads are at, and that's nowhere helpful.
It's
Um,
bizarre. And meanwhile, they've been utterly silent about October 7 or anti-Semitic acts across the country. To my knowledge, they've been quiet as a mouse, to use the Christmas analogy, on a horrific scale. Yeah, it's kind of
yeah,
breathtaking if they see this as a priority to attack, as those kinds of traditional marks of Christmas and Easter, I might add.
yes, it's an attack on Christianity, but it's also more largely an attack on religion in the public square.
Hmm.
People like that and various public figures, judges, and politicians occasionally
Hmm.
get it into their heads to try and drive out any mention of religion. That the public
Hmm.
square should be totally secularized. There's no reason why this should be the case. There's no reason why we can't celebrate Diwali or Eid
Yeah.
or anything. Religion is an enormous part of the lives of millions of Canadians.
Exactly.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
from Hanukkah to Diwali, all kinds of incredible traditions that we would do well to learn about as well. But at the
yeah,
same time, let's
there was
embrace our
a
own
case
traditions.
in Saskatoon a few years ago. I think I mentioned it in the book. A human rights activist objected to um, the buses having a sign that said "Merry Christmas,"
Hmm.
along with "Please shovel your neighbor's walk and be careful when you cross the
Mhm.
street." Um, so they said, "Well, we'll include other religious holidays if you like." And the guy said,
Mhm.
"No, no, no, none at all. None. One is too many." So
Wow.
it's not about fairness. It's not about equity. It's about them getting their entire way, which is to make a naked public square. And
Yeah, which is
I don't think that's particularly diverse or enriched.
exactly. Well, and it's also philosophically silly, because there's always a society, a public square of values. So the question is, which values are you going to adopt?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So when we look at the situation of Christmas today in 2023, there are a lot of cross currents and debates going on. But it's an exciting time, because we, as Canadians, as citizens, as people here, we have choices about how we're going to celebrate and mark Christmas within our family. So I did want to, as we wrap things up and get to the home stretch here, ask for your top tips when it comes to preparing for Christmas. You mentioned about planning, but
Mhm.
the actual time, are there things that you think would be wise to keep in mind as we think about marking Christmas time?
You have to make time and make money for charity. Um,
Oh,
Christmas is a great time for that, as it should be all through the year. But this is when people, as they say in A Christmas Carol, when need is felt the most. So make
mhm.
sure you're giving money or you're volunteering. Make sure your kids know this is part of how you spend Christmas. When you give presents to kids out of your love and generosity, make sure that they know that they have an obligation to do the same thing, that they should be thinking of what they can give their brother or sister or their parents or the community. Take them down to a soup kitchen, get them to shovel the neighbor's walk.
Mhm.
Um,
Right on.
Make sure that this is built into your Christmas celebration. Remember too that Christmas isn't a day. Christmas isn't just December 25th. It's part of a season. And the
Mm.
run up to Christmas is called Advent. Now, when I was growing up as a young Christian in the United Church, not a word I heard at all. But it's a time of preparation. So secular
Sorry,
or
Karen, you
religious,
never heard the word Advent before?
in a religious setting, never. No, no.
No, why would that be? I'm curious about that.
I'm
That's
astonished that you had heard of it in your youth. Had you?
okay. Well, we had at least in my tradition, is the lighting of Advent candles
Really?
from the
Yeah.
beginning. So there was this,
No.
constant marking of preparing for this season. I think that's the point, is that Christmas is simply not December
Yeah.
25. It's a season
Yeah.
as we think of, frankly, the faith all year round.
Well, congratulations to your tradition. We
Well,
didn't have
thanks.
that at all. There was much of the United Church that was still very Scottish tinged, the Presbyterian influence in it, and maybe I'd been
Oh,
going
yeah.
only to those churches. But I remember when I entered a new church in Saskatoon when I was a kid, and I saw a cross at the front. I thought I'd died and woken up in the Vatican.
No
my
way.
my United Church experience up to that time was very neo-Puritan. But so you've got Advent, and remember that Christmas only starts on December 25th. The 12 days of Christmas, December
Mhm.
25th to January 26th, and all kinds of interesting dates in there, which families might want to take a look at. The Feast of Stephen, December 26th,
Mhm.
is the time for charity.
Yes.
It was the traditional time for opening up the poor box in the church and so on. Then you got December 28th, which is the Feast of the Holy Innocents, Children's Day. It commemorates the
Mhm.
massacre of the Boyd children. And
Mhm.
there are various observances around that. St. Basil's Day, January
Mhm.
1st, Epiphany 12th night. Yeah, all kinds of good things.
But one of the things I find fascinating listening to your insights, Jerry, and certainly reading your book, is your uncovering of the timeless wisdom of this Christmas season, and how in those traditions we can learn the real meaning of Christmas, and that we would do wise to remember these, juxtaposed to so many others that would say, well, no, it's about a progressive society and just going forward and ignoring those traditions. And we would do well to remember those traditions, would we not, Jerry?
Christmas is a time to look backwards. Christmas is a remembrance. And that's why Christmas is all about traditions. Um, you have little kids, and they love traditions. The way you did it last year is the way you do it this year, and
Mhm.
so you're building family traditions. It's a time to look back. We sing old songs, old
Yes.
carols, just astonishing. We cut down a conifer and bring a dead conifer into our living room and
Mhm.
put baubles on it. I've got Christmas ornaments that are made by my grandmother, and now I have grandchildren. And tradition. New Year's is about looking forward. So if you take a look at the Soviet celebration of New Year's and see how they differed from the Soviet celebration of Christmas, Soviet celebration was all about rocket ships and looking to the future, progress. So in a society that insists continually on the new, whose motto is break things and go fast,
Mhm.
Christmas is a time to look back and to realize that wisdom love, togetherness, reconciliation, reconfiguring are all things we ought to have a time in the year for. And what better way to do it than amidst celebration and giving and conviviality?
Well said, my friend, Professor Gerry Bowler, as we talked about the real meaning of Christmas and the story of Christmas. And to all of you, as the audience, we're thankful that you could join us and with your questions. And we certainly want to encourage everyone to have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year as we look to 2024. So I'm really grateful that we could have this conversation, Gerry. And again, encourage everyone to subscribe to Leaders on the Frontier. Check out our website. And again, blessings to everyone, no matter what your background. And thank you for joining us today.
God bless us, everyone.
Indeed.